Hey guys, Rob and George here with you, aka VHS82 apostrophe, with episode 5 from season 4 of our closer look into the world of the X-Files. Compliments of this beautiful double, whatever you want to call this case, double case set, seasons 1 through 11. Excellent. If you can pick it up. The Field Where I Died first drops November 3rd, 96. It is episode 5. Rob Bowman returns as our director. Our writers return: Glen Morgan, James Wong, and one of my favorite cinematographers. Bartley's great. With Jean Joffin, the guy from Home. The cinematography in this episode is absolutely unreal. Just looking at my notes. Yeah, he also was on the Glacier unit in terms of the film Fight the Future. And that probably is why that scene, well, the whole movie looks good, but that particular scene stands out even more now to me. But this episode is a weird episode, and it does hit home a little bit with me. It falls right sort of in the middle. Now, again, it drops in 96. This is November. And it does have something to say, I think, about Jonestown. That was back in 78. And I didn't realize when I saw that, it blew my mind. I didn't realize more than 900 people died in that mass cultish, Jim Jones was it, suicide. 900, I guess I just never realized the number of that. There's not even a word for it. And Waco in 93, which I lived down there in Texas, my last year and a half, 2 years of the Army. I was stationed in Fort Hood, so I was pretty close to Waco. But I was down there. I just got to Fort Hood. And so I remember when we would turn on the local, news and, see, this is 50 some days out, right? There was like a 51, 53 day period, something like that, where they were tracking David Koresh's movement, leaving the compound, going in, getting supplies, him or others. And what made that really infuriating from an outside objective viewer was the amount it just seems like time is always your worst enemy. World War I, time was everyone's worst enemy. Had, not to get off on a tangent, but, had Austria just smacked Serbia for that assassination, and for, giving sanctuary to the Black Hand, if they would have just reached out, like that and just like, wham, chances are, maybe not absolutely, but chances are, everyone would have just shrugged their shoulders and was like, that's kind of how it happens. But 30 days roll by, and it gives everyone a chance to think about it. And that usually is not a good recipe for things like this. In, 51 days, 53, whatever that was, we would see and hear countless reports of the comings and goings, and ultimately the finality of that, of course, was an invaded compound by the ATF. And it just disaster. 76, I think, is the number I have here, were killed in that standoff ultimately. And you never want to see these things happen. Cult or not. I mean, people are people at the end of the day. And most of these people are misled in the most terrible, terrible way. The 900 under Jim Jones, I mean, that's insane. That just got led into that cult. And then, so it's tucked right between those two things, and go out just about 6 months from this episode dropping, and you got the Heaven's Gates UFO religious cult commit their mass suicide. I really hope this particular episode had no bearing on that. I was reading, trivia or somewhere that Chris Carter received a lot of angry phone calls when that went down, probably blaming the episode. You can't blame TV, cinema. I mean, these people, if they're a whack job, they're a whack job, regardless of what they watch or hear or listen to. They're going to do something, it is unfortunate, right? But enough of that. But this episode is weird, man. This episode, on the one side, the writing is absolutely just incredibly ambitious, and but on the flip side, on the other side of things, it just seems like maybe they bit off a little bit more than they can chew on this one in terms of squeezing it into a 45-minute show. Maybe this could have been a two-parter. I don't know how you drag it out unless, I was thinking, okay, so basically quick early synopsis, takes place in a small little town in Tennessee. Authorities receive a tip from someone named Sydney claiming child abuse and weapons possession by a local cult known as the Temple of the Seven Stars. Vernon Ephesian, who is the leader. Now this guy is Fun Boy from The Crow, 94. Also, I didn't realize he was in Tales from the Hood, and he's in Seven as well. Michael Massee died in 16. That is that's insane. We find one of our main actresses, Kristen Cloke, who is the wife of Glen Morgan, which is interesting, who plays Melissa. Michael Massee plays Vernon Ephesian, the cult leader. Kristen, as Melissa, plays one of his wives. I think it's either 6 or 7. I can't remember which one it is. But she was notably in Black Christmas from 2006, Willard from 2003, Final Destination from 2000. So both were, sort of, tied into some genre work, which is interesting. And I'll say Kristen Cloke's acting in this is absolutely phenomenal. And Michael Massee's too. We probably get more Kristen when we do Michael in this. But it's interesting. So, we find out that Mulder and Scully get nabbed into this as a result of stories abound of Vernon Ephesian, paranormal things and astral projection and just things, that would, neatly, nicely fall into both Mulder and Scully's lap in terms of why they're brought in. And so, they get this call, they're brought in, and there is a raid early on. There is a raid by the FBI on the let's just call it a compound, really. And in so doing, they must have got word ahead of time. They cannot find Vernon. And Mulder suddenly is sort of like a trance state, sort of looks out the window of this door, through another door window, out into a field, hence the field where I died. Which is an allusion to, or if that's the right word, to a past life, perhaps, where as a Confederate soldier, he died on that field. It's interesting. So that's kind of where we get the field where I died. Well, he, inexplicably, to everyone there, because intel says nothing about any sort of bunker or anything else out in this field. Mulder is sort of, not dragged, but, led. Something is leading him out there, and they see a door in the ground and yank it up just before Vernon and his 6, 7 wives, can't remember the number, commit suicide by drinking, the Jonestown Kool-Aid, I guess. And so they arrest them, take them in, but unfortunately they don't find the weapons. So they got like 24 hours to come up with something real, or how the system works. They're going to be let go, and unfortunately, because and this plays off of especially Waco, in the sense that the fear is if they don't find anything, if they don't find the weapons, a real, charge, that the ATF could get them on or whatever, the fear is they'll commit mass suicide and they'll lose all these people, right? And so it's a weird episode where it's sort of like you got this on the one side, you got this plate full of reincarnation, past lives that will come in, and then on this other plate you've got what do you call it? You have the issue of multiple personality disorders, which we find Melissa, sorry for the last 3 days outside have just fried my brain, I guess. You know how it is, getting ready for the summer and all that stuff outside. So you kind of get like a plate full of this multiple personality disorder, which we find Melissa may be victim of multiple personalities, one being Sydney, who is the one who sort of rats out the group and gets the authorities in there to begin with. Sydney just happens to apparently have lived during the time of Harry Truman. So you're not sure if this is a distinct separate personality or perhaps past lives or are invading Melissa's sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? It starts with a C. Gosh darn it. Some of you probably already know it. Well, anyways, maybe it'll come to me. So she may be sort of that vessel, lack of a better word, of past converging on her in a way that is manifesting itself as a multiple personality disorder. Somewhere in there lies the truth, right? And this is where the episode gets a little bit muddied up, where the water just gets a little too muddy. You're never too sure where it's leaning exactly in terms of where is the whole point here? Where are we going? And the thing that kind of drags it down a little bit for me, I think, is Mulder. Well, their last-ditch effort is to have Melissa hypnotized to try to get one of her personalities, past life, to give the goods on where the weapons are so they can get something real before they're released, right? And Mulder ultimately ends up going under hypnosis. And as a result, we find out, this is a little weird, but we find out that during World War II, during the era of the Holocaust, that Mulder, in fact, was a Jewish woman. Now, in terms of the soul, right? The soul, his soul that makes Mulder inhabited the body of a Jewish woman. Her son, as it would happen, is Samantha, who we know in this life is his sister, right? Scully happens to be the deceased dad. Melissa was the husband who has been taken to a concentration camp. And this is sort of like Mulder's and Melissa's souls have like sort of are interconnected, intertwined. This is where it's sort of it gets a little muddled down. What should come to no one's surprise, though, is the smoking man, Cancer Man, is a Gestapo officer who is the one who takes Melissa, or as she is then his husband, Jewish husband, to a concentration camp. We also find out a past life, perhaps Mulder was Sullivan Biddle, and Melissa was Sarah Kavanaugh, and she is with him at the end when he dies in that field during in the aftermath of a Civil War battle. And so you kind of get this sense, you're not sure, you're dealing with potentially two separate plate issues, but they keep kind of crossing over into each other. And you're just never sure where this is leading us. On the one side is Mulder and Melissa, eternal soulmates, and they just keep on, traveling through eternity, time, in terms of a reincarnation view of things, an endless circle, where ultimately the if you call it, I don't think it is, but you call it some sort of hopeful idea that things are always progressively evolving, getting better and better and better. You get a chance. It's like the early church's version of purgatory, walking up the purgatorial mountain. You just get plenty of time to continually strive for better and choose the better choice when choices are presented to you. And towards the end of this episode, Melissa is given the ultimate choice to perhaps change course for her soul in the next life. Ultimately, I think she relinquishes from it and chooses not to. It's too much of a choice. And this is where things just get really I mean, it's just one of those episodes you got to watch if you're into it. If you've made a connection to it, you really got to watch a few times to sort of start thinking things through a little bit. So, and so what does that say about Mulder and Scully's relationship? Are they not eternal soulmates? Throughout the ever moving franchise of the X-Files, as a viewer, objectionable viewer, all you really want to see is these two ultimately get married and have children and do that whole entire thing. And so this particular episode sort of throws a monkey wrench in that idea in a way, and it presents itself as something unique in its writing and execution. Something unique, but also a major contributor to why the X-Files, I think, made it so long, made it 11 seasons, because you had episodes like this that were so oddballish different in a way, set apart from not just the mythology. I mean, we're not talking about a Monster of the Week episode here that's set apart from the greater mythos arc. I'll tell you what would have been cool in this is it just, sort of, well, okay, so they kind of go through all this stuff. It's a race against time, and ultimately take Melissa back out to the field in the closing moments that they have to come up with anything real. Scully, goes through the archives of the maps of the battlefield as it was then, looking for this bunker where the weapons may be. And so they're just racing towards this end point, trying to establish something. But Mulder, unfortunately, doesn't really help a lot in that he gets too caught up in this, in his own perception of his own possible past life, as Melissa's relating it to him, and as he is confronted through his own hypnosis. What really, I think, would have made this better in the end if somehow you could have rooted this, and which I think they did in the writing. If I remember reading something where it just seemed like they did root this in a little bit more to the greater mythos arc, and maybe that's really what they should have done is made a few bridges. Now it's funny because I'm always complaining that there's not enough dialogue sequences that bridge episode to episode. There's a point where Mulder hits Scully with this idea, and in terms of changing choices and her and the lives that we live in, and she is pretty resolute that there's nothing that she would change about her life. And then she stops and pauses. Oh, wait a minute, that fluke man thing. Yeah, I could have done without that. So that's kind of cool that something from a really much older episode kind of sneaks its way in here in a creative way. And I wish you got more of that, really. I wish this series was more self-aware than it is. You do get moments. You do get moments. But I wish you got more of it. And so, unfortunately, as with the case, it seems like every season, every opportunity, he can't seem to save Samantha, and their race against time is going to ultimately fail here, and they're going to be discharged. The authorities are going to have to let them go, and the FBI are racing against time to try to uncover a bunker that technically is not on their piece of property, but on federal grounds, because it's a battlefield, right? And fire is exchanged between those in the compound in a main building and agents to basically keep the agents from coming anywhere near the building, because we're witness to a mass suicide, which ultimately, Melissa sort of fakes, but unfortunately for her, Vernon catches on to this and sort of forces her to drink the Kool-Aid. And so ultimately, by the time Mulder comes racing into the room, he's faced with just an entire room full of just dead bodies, all poisoned. And it's a weird episode because it's one of those moments that should have left one of the emptiest, most horrific feelings in your stomach, and yet somehow it doesn't. And I think because the episode, through the discussion of reincarnation or past lives, offers a thread of hope, and I think, unfortunately, that hope steals from how we should have felt at the end of this, because we really should have felt pretty empty. Like, how would you feel if you were one of the first people to wander into the camp where the Jonestown massacre had just happened, and you see 900 plus people just laying in a field of death? I mean, by their own hands, or the Heaven's Gates thing, or Waco as it would come to be. Anything like this is really disturbing, and so unfortunately, where this episode succeeds on so many levels, it sort of fails on others, I think, in a small way at least. But it is very. I wish somewhere Patton, Patton. It seems like it picked up some time ago. Patton believed that he was living a past life. Well, in a past life, he was a general, famed general on a battlefield, and that's why he believed he felt so comfortable on the battlefield in World War II. He felt so comfortable that it was like home from home. It was his home. The battlefield was his home, and he believed that in past lives he's always been a field general, right? And I don't know more than that. It's an interesting thought, and it does offer. This episode does offer a lot of interesting thoughts. This is Gillian's one of her favorite episodes, actually, which is interesting. I think if there's anything I left out. Kristen Cloke, who again plays Melissa, fantastic job. She will write the X-Files episode, season 11, episode 7. This is weird. I don't remember this one. RM9SBG93ZXJZ. And she actually had a small role in it. So that is interesting. I think that's about it. Interesting episode, though. One where ideas abound, but it just doesn't really ultimately satisfy, I guess, in a way that some other episodes do. I don't know. It's an interesting episode for sure. Very interesting episode. Looking forward to the next one as we continue a closer look into the world of the X-Files. See you next week. As always, we end these things off with Go Bills.
This is not a dream. Not a dream. We might be useful to you.